I'm Gail O'Brien. I have had the privilege of being a part of IBECC for many years. I hope that you all have enjoyed and are enjoying the experience, because the feedback that we get afterward is that it isn't just important for the contest, it matters a lot in how you think when you get internships and when you start directing your career forward. My background is corporate, state government, and higher education. And I'm an executive coach that works with leaders, particularly around their leadership, but also about how culture can really create engagement in their organizations. And it's great to see you all.
Hi, I'm Kevin Harrington. I echo everything that Gail said, and most especially thanks everyone for your flexibility and positive can-do attitude to be part of the competition this year. I always learn a lot and have been fortunate to be part of the competition for several years. I've known Michael and Gail throughout much of that time. I always learn things from y'all. It's always a pleasure, and hopefully you enjoy the experience as much as I do being a part of it. And in these sort of forums and sort of adapting and making it up as we go along, it's part of corporate America as well. We always have these kind of things we got to work through. So it tends to be more the norm, perhaps just not on the scale and reason of COVID-19. I've worked in 4 different industries in my career. I'm the site head for project management for a small pharmaceutical company. I'm in Charleston, South Carolina. I went to graduate school at Georgia Tech. I went to undergrad at University of Rochester. I'm a chemical engineer in terms of my academic background. I went through nuclear power training. I was on 2 submarines in the Navy before I started my corporate career. And it's always fun to be here, work with the team, meet and catch up with the other judges. I look forward to your presentations. Michael, if it makes sense, maybe we'll go ahead with St. Thomas. I appreciate that Ted and Evan, you fellows are ready to go through things. Is that fair?
It is.
Excellent.
I just had a quick question before we got started. For the formatting as it relates to feedback, are you going to give that after each school does it or at the end?
Gail, you explained that to me earlier. How are we going to do that?
We're going to do it at the end. So what will happen is you'll do your 10-minute and then you'll segue into your 90-second, and then the next team will do the same thing and the third team will do the same thing. And then at the end, Kevin will do the lead for the 10-minute feedback, and then I will come in for the 90-second, and we'll do it college by college.
Okay. Thank you.
And if there are any, we spent a lot of time in the session that I did a couple of hours ago, and I don't know if you have any time constraints, but we're happy to do the feedback and answer as many questions as you'd like after it's over. Okay?
Thank you very much. And Kevin, did you want an individual introduction from us, or do you just want us to jump right into our presentation?
No, actually, we'd like to know who you are.
Okay.
I agree.
Awesome. I'm Ted Fries. I'm a veteran student at the University of St. Thomas. Kevin, I used to be an AW in the Navy.
Wow, okay.
Yeah, so I'm all familiar with subs and all that good stuff. St. Thomas has been a great experience, and got out of the Navy and interested in consulting and what's going on in the world, and still trying to make a difference, I guess.
Excellent. Very good.
I'll echo some of the words that Ted just said. My name is Evan Sivit. I am a junior at the University of St. Thomas studying entrepreneurship, and I have recently taken interest in consulting as well. Hopefully someday start my own practice.
Gentlemen, that's excellent. Thanks again for joining us. I'll go ahead and read the summary I share with each of the groups as we begin. I should mention also we'll time things throughout, so we'll mention that I think here in the context of how we do things. I'm sure Evan and Ted, you fellows have been working on sort of how your timing and the cadence of your presentation works out. Okay, so here we go. You've been called back by the company. You gave your full presentation for a second visit. They've asked you to speak only about the ethical aspects of the problem and to explain why your solution successfully handles any ethical issues. You will have 10 minutes, and I will time you during that once we begin. There will be no Q&A. You may not use slides or video. You probably don't want to have more than 2 or 3 members of your team to do this, okay? So gentlemen, if you're ready to begin, we'll go ahead and get started. If you see me writing anything, I'm not drawing your picture, I'm just taking notes. Okay?
Sounds good.
Excellent. Let's begin.
Good afternoon, judges. We are Tommy Consulting, and today we're asking you to place yourselves in the shoes of Governor Walz and his cabinet for the state of Minnesota. Governor Walz, I want to start off by thanking you and your cabinet for inviting us back here today. I'm Ted Fries, and alongside my partner, Evan Sibbett, we represent Tommy Consulting and the University of St. Thomas. We're here today to address the ethical issues surrounding Boundary Waters Canoe Area Wilderness and the proposed copper-nickel mine just 5 miles away. If Twin Metals Minnesota is allowed to continue their proposed mine, the Boundary Waters will be in grave danger. We are here today to provide our ethical recommendation and a sound solution. Governor Walz, you have the authority to restrict state agencies from approving these necessary permits. You have the duty to protect our natural resources and the citizens that call Minnesota home. Governor Walz, we know you love our state as much as we do, and we trust you'll do what's right. Yesterday, we provided our financial, legal, and ethical analysis of this case. We showed how the proposed mine would cause a boom-bust economy that would leave the region economically devastated. Due to Twin Metals being a wholly owned subsidiary of Antofagasta, Antofagasta has ensured it will remain exempt from any future litigation. In the event of pollution to the watershed, Minnesota and the United States government would be barred from pursuing any financial recovery from Antofagasta. Therefore, the only people left to bear the financial burden are the Minnesota taxpayers. Is the reward of riches below worth risking our treasures above? The answer seems pretty clear.
In the words of our 26th president, here is your country. Cherish these natural resources, cherish the wonders and the history as a sacred romance. Do not let selfish men or greedy interests skin your country of its riches, its beauty, and its romance. Teddy Roosevelt echoes the notion that competing interests of economic development and preservation of our natural resources have long existed. This past Wednesday, April 22nd, marked the 50-year anniversary of Earth Day, a day in which we typically demonstrate support for environmental protection worldwide. Although this Earth Day may look a little different than ones of the past, what a better time to open our eyes and see the beauty that nature has bestowed upon us. When I was just 12, my father took my family and I to the Iron Ranges in Hibbing, Minnesota. He explained the rich history and what it meant as a pastime to our state. Although I may have taken his lesson for granted that day, it is a moment I truly will never forget.
The major problem at hand is the rich mining identity of the area and its contention with society's enjoyment and use of these lands for recreation and preservation. While mining will not take place directly in the Boundary Waters, the effects of mining will be felt in the Boundary Waters Canoe Area in the form of contaminated water. What's at stake here is not just an issue of the Arrowhead region or Minnesota itself. If the acid tailings drain directly into the Boundary Waters watershed, the water will cross international borders into Quetico Provincial Park, quickly creating an international incident. Because of the high probability of pollution, many connected waterways are in grave danger. Acid tailing runoff from copper-nickel mine would be devastating to the landscape of the ecosystem. Is it ethical to pursue mining for financial benefit when these natural resources and our health are at stake?
Now, as we dive into the ethicality of the case, we must first keep in mind the three competing stakeholders. Twin Metals, the environment, and the community are all at stake here. Many conflicts arise between the interests of Twin Metals and the interests of the Arrowhead community as a whole. While Twin Metals Minnesota sees the opportunity to maximize value for investors, they are doing so at a detriment to the health and economy of the Arrowhead region. Twin Metals' pursuit of profit could result in the decimation of tourism, recreation, and sustainable development for generations to come. It is therefore unethical to pursue short-term financial gain at the expense of such long-term prosperity in the region. Governor Walz, this is our heritage. Do not let these greedy interests skin us of these pristine lands.
The natural wonders that make up the Boundary Waters Canoe Area Wilderness have the right to clean air and sustained preservation. Additionally, indigenous lands have the right to be protected from the destructive process that is copper-nickel mining. Twin Metals wishes to introduce a method of mining called dry stacking, which collects the acid tailings that are left behind while mining and stacks them below the ground. If you are familiar with Minnesota's climate, this method is highly dangerous. Twin Metals has the right to follow the proper permitting process to begin conducting business. If awarded these permits, they will then have the right to conduct business according to their mining plan. But the area under contention falls too close to these sacred waters. The ecosystem has the right to sustained excellence, and the people of this region have a right towards continued enjoyment of these lands. Twin Metals Minnesota has a duty to not pollute waterways. They also have a duty to not interfere with Indigenous people and respect the lands they conduct business on. Governor Walz, you have the duty to respect the rights of all stakeholders involved, but you also have the duty to care for this land and your people. The people of the Arrowhead region have a moral duty to care for these protected lands. It is imperative that the community ensure these treasures will continue to provide recreation for visitors in the future. Who are we to take such a risk near a resource we would never get back?
Because of their unethical past, Twin Metals Minnesota is unable to fulfill their duty to mine safely in this region. They will also be unable to take full financial and legal responsibility if disaster does ensue. This all stems from a past of bribery and corruption within the Chilean government. Parent company Antofagasta paid off members of parliament for favorable voting and due reports. They have gotten away with the dumping of contaminated waste over international borders into Argentina, which in turn caused acid mine drainage around that particular site. To this day, numerous legal disputes remain unsettled. If you're still not convinced, at a separate site in Chile, the mining giant allowed pollutants such as mercury to reach levels up to 1,000% above what is permitted. As it relates to Twin Metals, they may have good intentions, and they may truly believe they can accomplish what they set out to. But the inherent risk and history of uncertainty raises a lot of red flags. So, will they be able to do better this time? And if they can't, will they take responsibility or just skip on out the door like they have in the past?
Governor Walz, you have the opportunity to join in a movement to disallow mining in this location. We recommend that you place restrictions on state agencies from approving these necessary permits and instead pursue a public-private partnership to support the current mining community. This will allow men and women to labor with dignity and uphold our strong Minnesota values while bringing clean energy to our state. A public-private partnership will benefit the public sector by providing renewable energy, and in return, the private investors will gain from the operating profit. Building green infrastructure such as solar panels, wind turbines, and hydroelectric power stations will maintain the dignity of the mining community by providing high-paying technical jobs. This Green Job Initiative ensures the future protection of the boundary waters and is in line with your sustainable goals for our state.
Our solution leads to long-term economic prosperity and mitigates legal risk while protecting the Boundary Waters canoe area and the health of Minnesotans as a whole. We are not only protecting the Boundary Waters, but also benefiting the broader environment. Governor, protect these lands, protect this state, and protect our way of life. Be the great leader we elected you to be, and stop this copper nickel mine plan. As we wrap up with you today, please take a moment and consider our arguments. Again, we want to thank you for taking the time to be with us today, and we wish all in attendance the very best going forward. Thank you.
Gentlemen, thanks a lot. Those were good. And I'm familiar with the Boundary Waters. I lived in Wisconsin for several years. I worked with a guy who actually lived there for a while. So
It's a beautiful area when you understand how important this issue is to us up here.
certainly is. And it's an excellent choice of topic. I appreciate some of the points you made reflect a lot of thought. I like your statement, Ted, about riches below for treasures above. That was an excellent way of kind of framing things. Gail, if I understand, we can ask some questions now. Do I make sense?
No, we don't ask questions. We just give feedback.
Okay, good. I liked a couple things. So first of all, it's excellent when you identify a problem or an issue. You dimension the scope of that problem or issue, and also use the example of past behavior as a mechanism to forecast or project, and lend credibility to the risks you're highlighting. So I thought that was all very good. I also like the fact that you proposed a solution. Too often we tend to call out problems or raise issues while also not providing the opportunity to give some other ideas about what alternatives could be. I appreciate, I did not see the 30-minute presentation. I can speculate about much of the things you covered, but I thought you made some excellent points. I wasn't clear on why it's the governor's decision, but I think you probably, it's not that you didn't mention that, because I think you did mention in the beginning to frame that. I just probably just didn't, it went too fast when we kind of threw it, but you took a position right away. There was no gray area there. So I thought that was very effective. I like the balance of how the two of you went back and forth. I thought that was good, because each of you, I think, were deliberately covering either a given part of the argument or, giving yourselves a certain amount of time. So that was very effective also. It helped us stay focused as you shifted between topics. That was a good technique. All in all, I thought it was solid throughout. Those catchphrases are effective for making your point. So nicely done in coming up with those. And again, nicely done with coming up with a proposed solution as an alternative, while also making clear, what your recommendation would be, and lending credibility to that recommendation to not go ahead. Good. So that's what I have. Gail, what were your thoughts?
Ted, I think you had a wonderful sense of presence. It was very, very effective. And Evan, the passion in your voice was really appropriate. I love how you sort of stepped in and created, in a professional way, an emotional resonance. I think when making an argument, that's really important. I think that you mentioned duty too often in the talk. In 10 minutes, I counted at least 8 times that duty was mentioned. And I think if you're thinking about an audience of a governor and his cabinet, I guess I would recommend, it's fine to do it once or twice, but at a certain point, it becomes a little righteous. And I think that's probably not how you will want to deal with business problems with leaders in the future, because it doesn't always go well when that happens. I think it would have been more effective when Evan was talking about, this is our heritage, and that very strong beginning that you both gave. You didn't mention the unethical behavior of twin minds until almost the end. And so I think it's important to pull that up in the beginning, because you're not just talking about how the environment will be harmed, you're also talking about someone with a record, or owned by a company that has a record of that. So that, I think, would have enhanced a little more credibility to your point. Your points were good, but it's good to have it, I think, earlier on. And when you said Twin Meadows' pursuit of profit, to be really nitpicking, any company pursues profit. So what would have probably, even though I loved your title and your heading, and I know you were relating back to that, you haven't made them out to be villains yet. And so it isn't just the pursuit of profit, it's the pursuit of whatever they intend to do at the expense of our heritage, or something that goes back to that kind of emotional resonance. But great job. And I loved be the great leader we expected you to be. That's much more subtle than duty. But great job, and congratulations.
Thank you guys for your feedback.
Thank you very much.
Absolutely. Thank you both. I enjoyed it.
And do you want?
Up next, Doral. Does that sound right, Kevin?
It does. Are we
Oops.
going to do each of the 10s, or are we going to do the 90 right after the 10?
Typically, we did all of the 10-minute and then the 90.
Okay.
Sorry about that, Gail.
don't we or not?
Sorry,
Sorry,
I moved you by accident, Gail. That was my fault.
Oh, no problem.
I think I'm accidentally in the.
Yep.
Let's just do all the 10 minutes together. Does that make
Okay.
sense, Kevin?
Sure, let's do it that way, Gail. I agree.
Yep. All right. Let me move in Esteban and Michael from Doral. All right.
Michael, we good?
Yeah, I think we're good. Are you
Okay,
guys
very good. Gentlemen, good morning. We're going to introduce ourselves first, and then we'll kind of just quickly refresh how we'll do the 10-minute session. Gail, can you go ahead?
I think you probably heard this before, but I'm a business ethics coach and have a corporate and higher ed and state government background. And we're just delighted that you're here. Are you, you're both, you're seniors and juniors, right?
In high school, yes.
In high school?
Yes, as dual enrollment students.
So we take college and high school at the same time.
Yeah.
I didn't know that. That's amazing. Wow.
Gents, that's awesome. Thanks for being here. Well done. You know, like Gail, I've enjoyed being part of this program for several years. I work for a small pharmaceutical company here in Charleston, South Carolina. I always learn something when we go through these things. So just as a reminder, this is how we'll do the 10-minute format. You have been called back by the company you gave your full presentation to for a second visit. They've asked you to speak only about the ethical aspects of the problem and to explain why your solution successfully handles any ethical issues. You will have 10 minutes. I will keep a timer while we're going. There will be no Q&A, and you may not use slides or video. You probably don't want to have more than 2 or 3 members of your team. Obviously, there's 2 of you on the team presenting today. If you go past 10 minutes, we will not be able to include any of that in sort of our conclusions or evaluation. And if Michael and Esteban, you gentlemen are ready, we'll go ahead and start. Are we ready?
Yes.
Excellent. So let's go ahead and start.
All right. So good afternoon. ByteDance's Board of Directors. We are Modern Solutions Consulting Group's ethical advisors. Thank you so much for having us back. My name is Esteban Molina, and this is my colleague,
Michael Marichan.
And so we'd like to begin with this. Ever since the founding of our nation, the United States of America, we have valued certain human rights. Now, as we all know, Thomas Jefferson wrote in the Declaration of Independence, we hold these truths to be self-evident that all men are endowed with certain unalienable rights, and that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Now, it is especially the case in this instance, the emphasis on liberty. Now, the key issue at hand is this. How can your platform of TikTok find a clear balance between protecting users from harmful content and the freedom of expression, ensuring that it remains a platform for creativity as stated on your community guidelines, as well as a platform for safety that protects its users? Now, your issue of having an unclear and lacking policy has had various repercussions, such as bad engagement with your stakeholders, including your main consumer base being adolescents, and not only that, but marginalized adolescents. Now, this also includes the issue of shadow banning. And shadow banning is defined, of course, as a website administrator banning or temporarily suspending users without his or her permission, and unjustifiably so. And finally, there is an overall negative appeal to your platform. Because of your lack of finding a balance between freedom of expression and protecting users from its harmful content, your platform, TikTok, is now overall being seen as an unreliable social media platform that frankly either censors too much or condones certain hatred. Now, our presentation will be broken down into our two ethical solution components, the first of which being the Santa Clara Principles and their examination, and amending content moderation. Now, what makes the Santa Clara Principles so legitimate? Well, they are comprised of organizations, advocacy groups, and academic experts from all over the world, from right here in the United States to Australia, with value one thing in common: the right to free expression online while maintaining transparency and accountability for your platform. Certain foundations include the American Civil Liberties Union Foundation of Northern California and the Center for Democracy and Technology. So, to be frank, your platform's community guidelines have yet to include a comprehensive numbers or appeals process like our principles will soon be proposed as. Now, the Santa Clara Principles consist of numbers, notice, and finally, appeal. Now, first is the numbers section, in which the principles state that the number of users and accounts that are being banned or temporarily suspended should be transparent to its users. Now, this is the key essence of your platform's transparency to its users. Of course, the reason being that without this transparency, then users will not be able to have access to certain information, such as that, crucially, that other accounts in the past have posted similar content and have been banned or punished for doing so. And therefore, this would, after seeing that these accounts are not being held accountable, certain users would naively be posting hateful content and would, of course, then be unjustifiably banned without knowing why. Now that we have discussed the numbers section, the principles lay out the section of notice, which again leads to the key essence of transparency to its users. Now, these users rightfully deserve the right to know that they deserve a clear and distinct warning for the hateful offense that they have just committed. Without these users being taken accountable, they are much more likely to repeat such offense and repeat this hateful act again, whether it be in a post, a comment, or a hateful gesture in a TikTok video, violating a specific community guidelines. A clear and distinct warning given to the user is crucial. And finally, now that we have discussed the notice section, we have the appeal section. Now, similarly, in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, Article 6 states that all humans on this earth deserve the human right of having a fair trial. Now, similarly, this could be applied to the digital sphere, in which users rightfully deserve a well-deserved appeals process to the platform if they feel that that this temporary ban or suspension is unjustified. And so now we will discuss the second component of this solution with my colleague, Michael Marichan.
Thank you, Seven. Whereas my partner discussed the Santa Clara Principles, I will focus on how your company could work towards amending its content moderation policies. At this very moment, your community guidelines, terms, and descriptions of what can and can't be allowed on the platform are simply too broad for various sections. This isn't to say that everything is wrong with your community guidelines, as your company does admittedly lay out a really good description when it comes to talking about suicide, self-harm, and dangerous acts, as well as minor safety. However, for every one of these nuanced sections, there are several inadequate ones that aren't specific enough when discussing what isn't or is allowed. This has led to a lot of confusion when it comes to moderating content. Consequently, there has been what users have deemed to be excessive censorship. For that, we have proposed a series of steps your company can take to become a leader in ethical content moderation, policymaking, putting you in the forefront of creating user-friendly social media platforms. Now, saying this, the first step that your company would have to take is creating a more ethical censorship. What does this mean? Well, it simply means that censorship must be well justified, particularly by a tech giant such as your company. This doesn't necessarily mean rare censorship so much as more selective and cautious. Now, this would entail two main things. The first being that before banning a category of speech, policymakers working on your application and your company must explain what makes that category so exceptional. And the rules to define its boundaries must be clear and predictable. Additionally, any restrictions on speech should be both necessary and proportionate, and emergency takedowns must be well defined and reserved for true emergencies. Now, the second provision would be that when content is flagged as violating community standards, companies must notify the user and give them an opportunity to appeal before the content is taken down. If they choose to appeal, the content should stay up until the question is resolved. Next up, we believe that your company should employ more consistency. So what do I mean when I say more consistency? Well, we simply just mean that your company could work towards adopting policies that allow users to develop opinions, express themselves freely, and access of information of all kinds in a manner consistent with human rights law. This would help your application to maintain a sense of free expression while still maintaining a sense of order on the application that won't ward off your user base. Moreover, it will help maintain marginalized groups on your platform, such as LGBTQ or physically disabled individuals that were previously scared and warded off because of the fact that your company was supposedly censoring them and shadow banning them. Moreover, we believe that your company can introduce some new tools. So when we say this, we mean that not everyone will be happy with every type of content that is present on the application. So users should be provided with more individualized tools to have control over what they can see on the platform. One important tool that can be implemented in your application in specific are parental controls, especially given the fact most of your app's user base tends to be young. Finally, but not least, we believe that your company should work toward enabling more evidence-based policymaking. So what does this mean? It simply means that your application should tread carefully when operating without facts and not fall victim to political pressure. ByteDance should work with researchers and experts to respond more appropriately to issues, as well as work to include a team of experts and a nonpartisan review committee to review decisions and content moderation policies made by the application. In conclusion, the main issue at hand right now is that your company is struggling to maintain a balance between liberty and order when it comes to what is allowed on your platform. Now, this is imperative given the young audience present in your application. Now, this has only been exacerbated by the fact that there is an unclear and lacking content moderation policy, and it's brought a lot of implications with it. However, we are certain that if you work towards implementing our plan, you could create a healthier and more sustainable user base and a healthier community. Thank you for your time. This concludes our presentation.
Good. Gentlemen, thanks again. Gail and I will just give you some feedback here. Gail, can you go ahead and go first? Is that okay? Hey, Gail, we cannot hear you.
I thought that what you picked was a really interesting topic. And while most people are going through greater protection, you're talking about what's happened when there isn't enough protection. So I appreciate that other side of it. I have no idea what the Santa Clara principles are. I'm assuming they're state of the art, or they're the standard that organizations should be following. Is that it?
Yes, it's been sort of prescribed a proposed solution for transparency to its user. It's not just for TikTok that we're discussing, but to various media platforms.
Just out of curiosity, who prescribed it?
It's been prescribed. It's based in Santa Clara University in California, and
oh, okay. So it's an accepted standard, right?
Right, by organizations.
Okay, all right. Then I think it might have been helpful. This is a very picky point. It might have been helpful to clarify why the Santa Clara principles are so important. Apparently there aren't other principles that are as highly regarded, and in order to be credible, TikTok should be following these standards because they're likely to become industry standards. Is that fair? Yes, no?
Yes.
I think that added clarification might have been helpful. Obviously, if you were really talking to TikTok, they probably would know what the Santa Clara principles are, so you wouldn't need to do that. But just for the purposes of something like this. I liked that you framed your discussion around balance between safety and freedom of expression. I like that you had two solutions. I like that you weren't righteous, which is also really important when you're trying to be persuasive to someone you want to change. It's an interesting concept, more equitable censorship that you used. And I don't really know what more equitable censorship actually is or how you're defining it. So one thing you might consider is fleshing that point out a little bit more, because while you talk about what you think the solution is, you're defining a concept that's really interesting, and that might have been helpful to add to your overall presentation. You both presented extremely well. This is important. You were credible. Your tone was appropriate, and it looks like you've done a lot of work. Congratulations.
Yeah, I agree with all the things Gail said. A couple things. So first of all, I did not know what TikTok was until a month ago. And now my wife is showing me TikTok videos almost every day. They are hilarious. I'm sure there's some good ones too. Maybe she's just not showing me all of them. Anyway, I thought about a couple of things. So just first of all, in terms of presenting, okay? And this is something you gentlemen will just get better at over time. When you present, always be sensitive to your audience and be focused on your audience, what they need versus what you want to tell them, which can be two different things. Particularly when you know a topic very well and you have a lot of content, there is that temptation to want to put as much content into your presentation, particularly when you have a limited amount of time, and you end up in this conflict between trying to get it all in there and trying to stay within your time boundaries, okay? So when you're limited by time, strip it down and keep it simple to the points you want to make. With a TikTok presentation, I wondered about two things. I wondered about, what does TikTok exist for? What is their purpose, their mission? If you told me that, I missed it, okay? But there's sort of, when TikTok started or in terms of what TikTok is supposed to be about, I'm sure that's written or stated somewhere, but I didn't, and if you shared that with us, I missed it. The next thing is, in the same sense that this is what we're about, this is what we're not about, okay? So to your point, I was speculating or understand TikTok says on their site or somewhere, this is what's appropriate for our site. It's consistent with our mission and purpose and why TikTok exists and we created it. These other things don't belong. I'm not suggesting those things don't have a place in somewhere else, but TikTok is not where it goes. So if TikTok has guidelines and structure and boundaries about what belongs in the site, it may have merit or value to suggest, TikTok, you need to stay with what you stay with and true to where you started and what you're about, and you stated that here. So I just was curious to ask, does TikTok have anything like that now? Meaning, could you simply say to TikTok, stay who you are, you've already stated before what that is, and enforce what the boundaries and guidelines are for what's appropriate content? Does that exist on TikTok's site?
Yes,
Okay.
They have that mission goal, and it's like something about creating joy on the platform and creating like a healthy environment, something about that.
Okay, good. The reason I say it is when you're speaking to, when you're advocating for a position that needs to be heard and may not be easily heard by a constituency, it's always effective to play them back. This is who you say you are. This is who you say what you're about. These are what your guidelines and your boundaries are. We think those things make sense. They seem aligned. If there are gaps or disconnects between those two things, it's helpful to point those out as well. Clearly, TikTok, this may not be the appropriate, they're almost a victim of their own success because they've had so much attention and so much following. They also, as a consequence, are getting folks putting content on the site because they know of the following and the intensity of interest that doesn't belong. So I don't find fault with any of the things you guys suggested. Would only point out if TikTok already has their own set of guidelines and or clear sense of identity of who they are, it's a good opportunity to remind them up front. So remind them up front of who they are, what they're about. Keep it simple and straightforward. I liked your recommendations, just like Gail suggested as well. I think those are effective and well thought. Okay, you guys did a heck of a job, and you know your topic pretty well. So well done. Just be more sensitive to your audience, and when you do practice sessions, be keen to ask your audience, what worked, what didn't work. Did I go too fast? Did I, were points disconnected? Did you understand it clearly? Okay, those practice sessions will help you rinse through just some of those finer points, which will make you guys that much even more effective in the future. Nice work. Thank you both.
All right. To South Florida.
So Michael, we've so far, okay, so we heard the Doral team.
Right.
University of South Florida.
Yeah, that's the other one's next. Okay,
leave
good.
them on.
Gail, I'm always tempted to ask you, like, what do you think of my feedback? I always like yours.
Unmute yourself.
Hello. How is everybody?
Hi, Julia.
Hello.
We found him.
All right, I think we're all set.
Really good. Julia and John, good afternoon. I think you heard earlier who Gail and I are and kind of what we're doing here. We enjoy doing these. We've been fortunate to do it multiple times. So thanks so much for participating this year. I appreciate it as a challenging environment. Perhaps it's certainly different, but it's certainly not a precedent in corporate America where we have to sort of improvise and overcome and work through some things different than what we expected. So thanks for being flexible and being a part of the competition. So what we're going to do is a couple things. I'll read or remind you both kind of how we'll do things in terms of structure of the 10-minute. You are our last 10-minute presentation. I'll time things as we go along. You are welcome to continue talking past 10 minutes, but Gail and I will probably disregard that part of your presentation, or at least the related content. Okay? Any questions for Gail or I before I get started?
Nope.
Groovy. Okay, so let me read the summary format. I'll ask you again if you're ready, and then we'll start the clock and we can begin, okay? Really good. Okay, so you've been called back by the company you gave your full presentation to for a second visit. We've asked you to speak only about the ethical aspects of the problem and to explain why your solution successfully handles any ethical issues. You will have 10 minutes. There will be no Q&A. You may not use slides or video, and you probably don't want to have more than 2 or 3 members of your team do this. You've already checked that first box. Thank you for the both of you showing up. Okay, unless there's any other reason for us to pause or wait, stop or hold, we'll go ahead and get started. Is everybody good? Yep. Excellent. Okay. Julie and John, go ahead when you're ready.
Thank you very much. And thank you, Brookdale Senior Living Board of Directors, for inviting us back. We are CARE Consultant Association for Response Ethics, and we would like to say hello and thank you again to one of the largest medical companies dealing in the field of aging adults. Not only does Brookdale run memory care and nursing home facilities, but also assisted living, with the mission of providing comfortable and caring environments for your residents with opportunities to improve wellness, fulfill lifelong wishes. And Brookdale says it all starts with listening to and understanding the unmet needs of those they are working with. Brookdale then partners with them to come up with a solution to enrich their lives. Now, this is a commendable mission, especially for Brookdale, which has had a history of lawsuits for negligence against the company, leading to the turnaround in 2018. Your new management, accompanied by your new management and the rest of your team, now Brookdale has returned to this mission and fully embraced ethical conduct, is what we would like to report for this follow-up. Unfortunately, the board members here are aware that this is not yet the case. There are still numerous ethical issues and new cases of negligence and lawsuits within the Brookdale system. This has a solution, but first we must address the problem. Negligence is a form of medical malpractice, which is in the medical industry is a serious ethical issue. Negligence refers to the failure of Brookdale and its associates or care providers to provide ordinary, proper, and diligent care to its residents. This could include the failure of certified nurse assistants from checking on patients in a timely manner, or in an instance just 7 weeks ago, the failure to appropriately place a patient within a facility. Just 7 weeks ago, in a Sandia Springs facility in Rio Ranchero, a man named Gilbert Pear was beaten to death by his roommate who suffered from dementia. Now, I'm sure the board, as well as any practitioner, could tell you that this should not happen. A man with a known cognitive disorder such as dementia should not have been placed in an environment where he could cause himself or others harm. There are Brookdale policies for these in place, and the fact that this did occur means that several employees overlooked his symptoms or his diagnosis. Which one is more serious, I do not know, but there are also cases of sexual abuse, which my partner will go over now.
Thank you, Julia. To examine sexual abuse, we need to go back to December 19th, 2019, when police arrived at a North Carolina Brookdale facility at 3 a.m. responding to a reported sexual assault. Joseph K., age 47, an employee for Brookdale Senior Living, was arrested and charged with second-degree forcible rape of a 79-year-old patient who was under his care. Now, in response, Brookdale released a statement stating that all hiring policies were followed in regard to this individual. But this merely indicates that Brookdale needs to go beyond merely satisfying state regulations and ensure a higher standard of quality in its employees, as the impact of such a case on Brookdale public relations is devastating.
These cases are not only a legal and public burden for Brookdale, but they indicate that the problems of negligence and abuse have not been resolved with the 2018 turnaround. Some other easy examples of negligence within Brookdale facilities would be the failure of certified nurse assistants to respond to patients' call buttons, which indicate that a patient is in need of immediate assistance. In the area and field of aging adults, where many patients are high risk and require personalized and high quality care, the negligence can be the difference between life and death.
But what is the ethical issue here? Negligence of patients goes against the Universal Declaration on Bioethics and Human Rights, particularly Article 14, subsections 2C and 2D, which cover, respectively, improvement of living conditions in the environment and the elimination of the marginalization and exclusion of persons on the basis of any grounds.
These cases also go against the Medical Code of Ethics, which states that the first principle is that a physician shall be dedicated to providing competent medical care with compassion and respect for human dignity and rights. Rights for residents outlined in state statutes, such as the right to a decent living environment free from abuse and neglect, or the right to consistent and adequate health care. The eighth principle also states that a physician shall, while caring for a patient, regard responsibility for that patient as paramount. There also is a chapter dedicated to why sexual abuse is obviously infringing upon patient rights and health. And these are the same principles that are echoed in the Code of Ethics for Certified Nurse Assistants, which make up a majority of Brookdale's employees.
But beyond this culture of systemic negligence goes against not only medical law, international law, and even Brookdale company policy, but against basic human decency. As individuals, we expect a certain level of respect and dignity from others, and we give that respect and dignity in return. Treat others how you wish to be treated, a classic adage that should be at the core of Brookdale's policies. Because Brookdale's residents deserve these things as much as anybody, and they are often wholly reliant on Brookdale's employees to ensure that they receive them. Would you tolerate your parents or grandparents receiving this level of care, of being worried that they would die of severe neglect or even be sexually assaulted by the people who are supposed to be taking care of them? In light of this, the repeated mistreatment of Brookdale's residents is simply unacceptable, not just as the industry leaders in assisted living, but as individuals who likely have loved ones that do or one day will live in an assisted living facility.
The few of the board members that still aren't convinced will point to the same items. That since 2018, Brookdale's financial performance has improved with the cutting of expenses, and that levels of community from the focus on quality have also attracted some new residents, at least enough to keep business flowing. But if the board members are content with the current situation, then they are also turning their backs on the residents who can't come forward, the residents who can't speak up, the residents who are victims of systematic abuse and negligence, and they are falling into the same levels of apathy and actions that led to the need for a turnaround in 2018. But we can see with our presence here today that there is a willingness to change, and there is hope for a better solution.
The question is, now that we know that Brookdale's current policies are an improvement, but still not enough, what is the plan going forward? In order to definitively halt the progression of malpractice and negligence, which has spurred both significant legal and financial difficulties for the company, we have formulated a multi-tiered accountability solution that we call AIM. AIM looks at 3 major categories in which effective solutions need to occur: administration, inhabitants, and marketing. The first phase of our plan addresses the major elephant in the room: administration. In order for a company to be effective, those that overlook day-to-day operations have to be, well, looking in the first place. This means that any solution must involve overhauling management in facilities with pending lawsuits. When dealing with lawsuits caused by understaffing, a new standard of consistently assessing residents' needs and either assigning sufficient staffing or relocating a resident to another Brookdale facility that can meet those needs is absolutely essential.
The second phase of this solution refers to inhabitants and accountability to protect them. Currently, the system of inhabitants and family members calling administration to report problems is insufficient. Therefore, all residents should be required to have a copy of the Brookdale Integrity phone line, a line currently only available to employees, in order to report unethical behavior directly to corporates. This way, their problems would be resolved efficiently and more quickly than talking to administration. There also needs to be an accountability for the night shifts. A check-in system will be required for employees to check in hourly during the night shifts to make sure they are attentive, to prevent further negligence cases against these employees, and to protect our inhabitants of our facilities.
The third and final phase of our plan is marketing and improving Brookdale's public image. By adding an ethics page to Brookdale's official website, which is a standard among its competitors across the assisted living facility industry, and resolving the ongoing class action lawsuit in California, we will show the world that Brookdale has changed for the better. As it stands now, Brookdale has garnered a reputation for negligence and abuse at its more than 1,100 facilities. But having taken substantial action to reform Brookdale's administration and improve quality of life for Brookdale's inhabitants, it's essential that this success is communicated and Brookdale's poor public image be rightfully rehabilitated. In light of all these unethical cases, we at CARE hope Brookdale will implement these solutions and aim for a more ethical future. Thank you.
Very good. Hey, Julia and John, nice work. I like the acronym. That was a good technique to use for framing recommendations, keeping it straightforward. I liked, Julia, how you pointed out, first of all, the disconnect between 2018, you guys had these problems, these issues, they were severe. You've worked, or at least taken ownership to some extent, or had communicated intent for things to improve, but you clearly understand, recognize, and want to improve further, and consequently you've brought us here. I like the way you called that out and use that mechanism to sort of lend credibility and bring weight to your arguments for how things should improve. Certainly the abuse that you mentioned is scary. We all have elderly loved ones, and it's very uncomfortable to think that they would have to be in that kind of environment regardless of situation. So another technique I liked that you used was you equated malpractice and negligence with the ethical issue. So you did that up front early, equating here's the behavior, here's the problem, here's the gap, and here's why that's an ethical problem. I like the way you did that as well. It was straightforward, it worked effectively. Okay. It's obviously a complex topic. I'm sure your much longer version of the presentation shared a lot more detail and so forth, but I thought you did a good job of picking the parts out that you wanted to cover for the 10-minute piece, because I thought it worked well what you did in covering it in 10 minutes. You still had just a little bit of time left, but you brought it to conclusion in an effective way. Okay, so thanks for for your presentation. I'm trying to think about some things I thought you could do better. So you mentioned Brookfield is an industry leader in assisted living, and you, again, you sort of gave them credit for and reminded them this is who you are. This is also who I think you're striving to be. I don't know if you called out anything that Brookfield says in terms of this is how we care for people. This is why this is a safe environment. This is why we're a nurturing, supportive environment for people, you know, in the twilight of their life. If you called those things out from what Brookfield has, I may have missed it, but if, I would assume you probably did that in the longer presentation, or I may have just not been paying attention. So anyway, clearly you connect with, they want to do better. You've called us back. You've used a couple of techniques to equate the ethical issue, and also I like the way you framed your presentation and the acronym. That was a good approach as well. But it was pretty straightforward, easy to follow. You didn't go too fast. I thought you did a good job of condensing it down. Okay, Gail?
Thank you.
Julia, I loved your beginning that you acknowledged who the judges are and how you set it up. I think that was a really effective way to do it. I think that one thing you might consider is that you only allowed 2 minutes for your solution, and you had 8 minutes to state the problem. And you're talking to people who already have lived this and have read the situation. And so you might want to consider shifting the balance of what you say in the beginning to make your case, because certainly you had a number of examples. The solutions are part of this, and they deserved, I think, a little more attention. You had some good statements like important to go beyond state regulations and important to go beyond the laws. But part of the fact that something isn't working would potentially suggest that they have training issue problems, they have hiring issue problems, they have clearly culture issue problems, which argues for how the values are or aren't expressed. And they have discipline failures. So you kind of lump things, I think, into administrative, but I think it's useful to bring out that there's a number of issues and how AIM might address any of those. Because I think while you have a compelling case, you also want to make your solution compelling, and it needs more time, I think, to be able to do justice to your ideas. I think that you had lots of good suggestions, like a hotline for the to bypass administration, and I think that the accountability of the night shift. I mean, you really have obviously spent a great deal of time and effort to research and do a really effective job of knowing your subject. And I think you both presented very well. And I certainly liked your talk. Be careful that it doesn't sound like scolding, because when you do have a chance to, and you will in internships or in jobs, you will have a chance to call out concerns and problems. And one of the purposes of having this kind of exercise is to give you practice, and you did it for much of it, being neutral as you express in tone, as you express a problem. But boards of directors don't like to be chastised. Yeah. And so even though a great suggestion is going to be given, you might well find they're not listening, because we all know people who can't handle criticism. So as you think about important, fabulous information, think about the audience in terms of how do I need to frame this in a way that they'll really listen. But it was a great job, and I think you both deserve kudos for the amount of work that I'm sure went into this.
Yeah, I agree. I thought you did a really good job of staying with the ethical issue, because that's all you were given time to focus on. And I completely agree with some of the feedback that Gail had about balancing that time and how you talk with your audience. You guys will only get better at that stuff. And I know those 2 points that Gail shared will stay with you, and it will make you that much more effective. So well done. Thank you both.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
So it looks like now we'll move to the 92nd. And why don't we, while this team is already up, why don't we take the person who's doing it, which is Verity. Is she available?
For USF, our team?
Oh, I'm sorry. You know,
It's okay.
I meant to say Tijan.
Yes.
I meant to say that. I really did.
Oh,
It's
I'm
so
just like,
powerful.
wait.
I promise. No.
Yeah.
I'm just like, did I forget her middle name?
I've had a really rich day of hearing wonderful, wonderful things. And I will have to acknowledge that the brain is not as sharp on names. So forgive me.
Completely understandable.
I am going to read the 92nd. I'm looking, and we haven't done this with all students, unfortunately, but I'm looking at your all backgrounds: economics, social sciences, analysis and geography, and mechanical engineering. You guys are really you're pretty diligent and serious about what you're taking on. That's fantastic, and that you are doing this program, as all of you are, just really infuses your disciplines with a whole other perspective. So I meant to say that to everybody. That's terrific. The 92nd presentation. And Michael, do you want to take out everybody but Tijan?
Yes, I will do that.
That'd be great. And I will be right back. Excellent. Oh, Michael beat me. I'm sorry. I was hoping to still get here while he was taking people off. All right. The 92nd presentation. Imagine that you're an employee of the company whose case you've been studying. You're at a meeting in which people are discussing the issue. However, no one has brought up ethics. There's a pause in the conversation. You have 90 seconds in which to convince the other people at the meeting that there are ethical issues that need to be addressed. You don't have to argue for a solution. You just need them to see that there are serious ethical issues here. And one member is doing it. And let me set up my clock. All right. Let me know when you're ready.
I'm ready.
And I can't hear you. Can we do a sound check?
Yes, is this any better?
Yes, a little louder.
Oh no. Is this better?
It's better.
Okay, I'll try to really speak up.
Can you hear, Kevin?
I can. I'm good.
Okay. We're ready when you are.
Thank you. We here at Brookdale Senior Living have had one mission in mind since the beginning: to enrich the lives of those we serve with compassion, respect, excellence, and integrity. However, those goals are far from reality. Our history is shrouded in not only numerous lawsuits, but the pain and deaths of our residents. As investors and potential residents run in fear from our company, we must ask ourselves, how long until we do something about it? As the largest operator of senior living facilities within the United States, people trust their lives into our hands. and we continuously abuse that trust? How many more seniors will suffer negligence at our hands? How many more employees will we improperly train? And how many more names can we bear to watch be added onto the long list of untimely deaths from our facilities? So I urge my Brookdale colleagues to change how we address accountability within our facilities. Through new regulations and administration, inhabitants, and marketing, Brookdale can set an industry standard for what senior care truly looks like. And we can ensure that residents are always priority number one. Thank you.
Thank you. And you timed it perfectly. You had 3 seconds left.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. We will be doing then University of St. Thomas, to go back to the order. And we're looking for Maddie. Hi.
Hello.
Well, isn't this interesting? Business, law, and compliance. I'm looking at the backgrounds of many of the University of St. Thomas students, and how great to have that in there with the economics and the entrepreneurship and the finance. Terrific.
Thank you.
Imagine that you're an employee of a company whose case you've been studying. You're at a meeting in which people are discussing the issue. However, no one has brought up ethics. There's a pause in the conversation. You have 90 seconds in which to convince the other people at the meeting that there are ethical issues that need to be addressed. You don't have to argue for a solution. You just need them to see that there are serious ethical issues here. And you are the team member who is going to give us those. When you're ready to start, let me know.
Wonderful. And can you hear me okay?
Great. Thank you.
Patty can hear you well. Thanks.
Excellent. We believe in the dignity of our environment, the freedom to enjoy Earth's natural splendor. We believe that every moment spent with loved ones in nature is one of growth, of celebrating connectedness. We believe in upholding the strong economies that Americans have built in tourism and recreation. A copper, nickel, and precious metals mine has been proposed in northern Minnesota, led by Twin Metals, a subsidiary of mining giant Antofagasta. The area is home to pristine Boundary Waters Canoe Area wilderness. Given northern Minnesota's strong mining identity in this highly profitable endeavor, alongside Minnesota's deep identity and connection with the Boundary Waters, make for a truly challenging conflict between the treasures above and the riches below. Northern Minnesota has remained self-sustaining in a tourism-led economy. One misstep in this mining process and this region will be destroyed. Twin Metals' parent company, Antofagasta, has already caused devastating environmental damage in their home country. So this is an organization we cannot trust with the preservation of our land and our community. By making the decision to halt mining in the Boundary Waters, we fulfill a duty to preserve this nation's natural splendor and protect our right as human beings to enjoy this sanctuary for generations to come. One mistake is all it takes. The Boundary Waters could be gone forever. For the betterment of northern Minnesota, for the dignity of this natural sanctuary, this project should be shut down. Thank you.
Thanks very much. Thank you, Maddie, very much.
Thank you, Maddie.
Thank you.
And now we're looking at, is Doral? Am I pronouncing it wrong? The university, the college? Doral?
I think it's Doral.
Doral, sorry. All right. We're looking for Verity. Hi, Verity. And you are a senior?
Yeah, I'm a senior in high school. I'm a dual enrollment student too.
Awesome. Well, you've heard this 2 other times before, but I still need to read it. Imagine that you're an employee of the company whose case you've been studying. You're at a meeting in which people are discussing the issue. However, no one has brought up ethics. There's a pause in the conversation. You have 90 seconds in which to convince the other people at the meeting that there are ethical issues that need to be addressed. You don't have to argue for a solution. You just need them to see that there are serious ethical issues here. And you're the one member of the team who will do it. And when you're ready, just let me know and I'll start in a minute. Okay.
I'm ready.
Great. Okay.
Right now, we have a multitude of ethical issues that we have not dealt with. I know some of you have firsthand experience witnessing some of these issues, such as shadow banning, that have been happening recently, where people have had their content censored because they're part of a certain group, such as the LGBT community. These are important ethical issues that warrant change. Our users are still being confused by our unclear policies and unbalanced policies, and this has been our main issue so far. We want to strike a balance between acceptable content and free expression. Now, given this current situation, if someone has a problem or question, they may not be able to find a solution or an answer due to a lack of clarity in our company's policies. This makes our users unhappy, and some have even opened legal cases against our company. We still don't have an appeal process for them, and this also makes users unhappy, which creates users who will not always return to our platform. Our company has been making these decisions with the good intentions of protecting people, but the results go against the values our company holds, and it affects us as well. Think of your own personal values. What do they look like? For TikTok, the answer to this is safety, joy, and creativity. The first line of our community guidelines says, TikTok's mission is to inspire creativity and bring joy. It goes on to say that we are committed to keeping this community safe. It is important to uphold our values so that people know that they can trust us. We need to focus on these ethical issues not only for the good of the company, but for the good of the people it serves.
About perfect. Last sentence and it starts ringing. 90 seconds. Great. Thank you very much.
Very well done. Thank you.
And I think what we'll do then is it's back to you, Kevin, Michael, could you bring everybody back?
You want to bring everybody from all the groups?
Yeah, because we've now
Okay.
done everybody, correct?
Yes, we have.
Okay.
All right, let me work on that.
And then, Kevin, you take it.
And Gail, as I remember, what we're going to do is we're not sharing any judging results with the team. We're going to share those with Tom. It's really just an opportunity for us to ask any other questions or share any additional feedback, and for the teams to share feedback with us. Do that make sense?
Actually, it's not about questions. It's just to answer their questions. Yes, but it's about and I guess you would want to start with where you started, which would be St. Thomas, I guess. So it would be giving feedback to, I need to get into profile to see everybody. It would be giving feedback for the 10-minute and 90-minute, 90-minute, it must have felt like that to you all. 10 minutes and 90 seconds for each of the colleges.
Good, okay.
Oh, it's doing it again. All right. You're done now. Thank you so much. Stop. Okay. So I guess we would be starting with St. Thomas. Did they go first? I think they did.
Yeah, so a couple things. I think we shared a couple of things. First of all, I really, for you guys in the way you did the 2-minute or the 10-minute, I really liked the balance of how you shared and kind of went back and forth to help focus attention of your audience. Okay, that was very effective. I also really liked, as I mentioned before as well, The way you use that sort of slogan about putting at risk what's above for the sake of recovering what's below, and you guys said it better than I did. I also want to mention to, let's see, Maddie. Okay, Maddie, you did the 90-second for St. Thomas. Am I correct? Okay, excellent. Maddie, you did a great job. Okay, I really liked the fact that you called out the ethical issue. You focused on the ethical issue. You avoided the temptation to sort of rehash things, because 90 seconds goes by really fast. So really a good job of focusing on, here's the ethical issue, and not being distracted by or jeopardizing the time you had or the opportunity by trying to cover too much. That was good, staying within the constraints and sort of the of what the situation was. So thanks very much. Otherwise, gentlemen, I appreciate you did a good amount of research. St. Thomas is in, where are you guys? You guys are in Minnesota, right? Are you in Minneapolis?
St. Paul.
Okay, St. Paul, thank you. Good. Yeah, as I mentioned before, I'm very familiar with the Boundary Waters. I hope it might be a national park sometime, but of course we'll have to figure that out with Canada when the time comes.
It's bigger than Yellowstone.
That's a really good point. You're right. It is a monstrous place. Have you guys seen the National Geographic article? There was a cover story on the Boundary Waters a few years ago. Check it out. They've got some phenomenal pictures, of course. But I would just say, as I think we talked about earlier, and Gail pointed out, and I mentioned to one of the other teams as well, when you give a presentation, be very considerate and focused on your audience. How well they hear it will directly affect how much credibility you have with your recommendations. If you stay factual, stay objective, that will be more effective as well when you present recommendations, and be very clear in terms of giving them options. This format didn't allow it to do that in 10 minutes or 90 seconds. I assume you may have had that with the longer one, but give options, explain why you have those options, and then make a clear, distinguish, here's our recommended option, what you ought to do, okay? But I enjoyed your presentation. I love your topic, and thanks for participating. Very challenging. It will get easier, okay? Thank you. Gail, what would you have to share with St. Thomas as well?
Well, actually, the 92nd for St. Thomas, Maddie, you had a lot of passion. And I think that's an important characteristic when you're sitting with a bunch of colleagues and you want to get attention. You're not just saying something, you're speaking from irritation, it seemed like, as well as the importance of the values of following what you're saying. So how you presented, I think, was very good. You certainly picked the core of how things come together in terms of the ending. We can't trust is an important message in a very short amount of time, and one mistake is all it takes. So those were good call outs for attracting attention. And I think that you used your time really well.
Yeah, I agree.
Thank you.
Well done.
Thank you.
So actually, Kevin, we've already done the feedback for the 10-minute, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so then I'll just take then the next one. We've done St. Thomas. I'll take Doral. And Verity, I thought that you really did an incredibly effective job of not wasting a second in terms of the 90 seconds that you had to get right into the role. You were clearly in the role, calling people out for something that's been forgotten and speaking to your employees as if this was a normal actual meeting, and that was very effective. And certainly the focus on how the customers are being treated was the perfect approach to take in something that short and something that focused. And reminding people about safety, joy, and creativity, and keeping the community safe and the disconnect was very effective. So I thought you did a terrific job. Kevin, do you have any thoughts about what Doral and what Verity did?
I do, Gail. You obviously are reading from all of my notes because you took everything I was going to say to Verity. Verity, really nice job. Well done. You also did a really good job of focusing on just the ethical piece. It's very helpful when folks, particularly in the constraints of time, are deliberate and understand that's what we want to hear about. And your point about ending with safety, joy, and creativity was well done. So always leaving your audience with that focus, that last remaining bit that kind of stays with them, is excellent. Okay, so that was a nice technique. Well done at the end, and you're very paced. You made a good use of your time. I wish I could add something more to what Gail said, but I agree with everything Gail said. Well done. Thank you.
Thank you both.
And now, University of South Florida, Tijan, where are you? There, right there. In something like the 92nd, and in something like anything when we have a limited amount of time to get someone's attention, it's really, ironically, the catchphrase, the phrases that we say that can be the most memorable. And Tijan saying our goals are far from reality is quite a bucket of cold water on the ability to feel good about the fact that your values are good, therefore we must be doing fine. No, nothing to do with that. The question, how long until we do something? And then the ending of I urge. I think that each of the 3 90 seconds really did a great job of treating a, I don't know, more ambiguous kind of question. I mean, for some of you, it isn't, if your company wasn't, you know, directly involved, if you were a consulting firm, you know, the need to operate out of the consulting firm to, you know, to call attention to what's being done. And it wasn't as easy for Maddie, for example, because you were really, you weren't part of the, you made the choice not to be part of Twin Minds, which you could have done, right? I mean, you weren't talking as an employee of Twin Minds, were you? Or
That's
you were?
Correct.
So what were you? I asked a question and you said correct, and I'm not sure what I asked.
I apologize. My internet might be a little bit shaky. We were speaking from the group speaking to Governor Tim Walz.
Right. So what you were doing was you weren't an employee of Twin Minds. You were speaking again as one of the people who was talking to Governor Walsh, right?
That's correct.
Okay, so that was that point of view. Verity was talking from the perspective of being an employee of TikTok. And Tijan, you were talking from what perspective?
Also as a worker of Brookdale.
Can't hear you.
Also as a worker from Brookdale.
Still can't hear you.
Specifically from
Yes.
the point of Brookdale.
Okay, so you were speaking, yes, you were speaking from the perspective of Brookdale. So depending on the position that you take in terms of where you are, it shapes your 92nd. But I think all 3 of you did a really terrific job. And just in general, before Kevin closes out or asks for questions, I think this is an extremely challenging exercise during a pandemic. I think it's really hard to pull people together and to do what you would normally do. Have any of you been in IBECC before? So this was a really amazing experience that you all could come in and do so well and have no track record with IBECC. So I just think that you should really treat that as an amazing accomplishment. And I think that each of you have, in these 3, I really felt heart and soul was involved in everything that you guys were doing. And I think that makes a huge difference. So I think that's terrific. And if Kevin asks for questions and you have any, please don't hesitate to ask us. But I'll turn it back over to Kevin.
Yeah, certainly. So thanks for being patient, hearing what we had to share with y'all. And I could not agree more with Gail. When we do this in person, it is a phenomenally different experience. I hope each of you, if you have not, will have that chance to participate and join us in the future. I would love it if you would remind me when the time comes. Hey, Kev, there was a lot of stuff you wanted to tell us, but you couldn't because you couldn't talk to us individually. That'll have been a year ago, so I forgot. So we'll just have to focus on what we're doing when the time comes. But I hope we all meet in person sometime, and I hope you'll have a chance to participate in IBECC in the future. Any questions for Gail or I?